Why is it that just as the summit reveals itself on the horizon, our steps falter and we begin to descend? What demon whispers to us in the twilight of triumph, beckoning us back into familiar abyss we so desperately climb to escape? Imagine this. A man standing at the edge of everything he ever desired, and yet his hands tremble, his knees soften, and instead of crossing the threshold, he turns away. Not because the door is locked, but because the silence on the other side terrifies him more than any scream ever could. Success, it seems, does not merely demand achievement. It demands the death of an older self. And oh, how we mourn the corpse of our mediocrity even as it poisons us. Have you ever noticed how the closer we get to the light, the more we crave the shadows? As if some part of us knows that illumination burns, that it reveals not just a path forward, but also the grotesque architecture of our fears. Nietzsche would say that man is not afraid of his chains. He is afraid of the absence of them. Freedom tastes like vertigo when you spend a lifetime walking in circles. And success? It's the most terrifying liberation of all. Because what happens when there is no more excuse, no more enemy, no more reason to hide? Who are you when there's no longer anything left to blame? We sabotage ourselves not because we are weak, but because we are too faithful to the ghosts we've named identity. We build altars to our past, carve our names into the stone of suffering, and then kneel before it, afraid that rising would mean betrayal. Have you ever asked yourself, what if your failure isn't accidental? What if it's a carefully constructed ritual, a sacrifice made not to the gods of success, but to the comfort of the known? Each time you retreat, something in you breathes a sigh of relief. That sigh is the enemy, and it sounds remarkably like home. What if success feels like death precisely because it is? The death of the mask, the story, the beautifully tragic script we've recited so many times it became indistinguishable from truth. You don't fear success. You fear having no excuse left to stay broken. You fear becoming visible, truly, terribly seen. Because then you might be held accountable not just for your failures, but for your vast and untapped brilliance. And isn't it easier, far easier, to pretend we were never capable to begin with? So I ask you, who benefits from your sabotage? Who survives when your higher self is buried beneath comfort, doubt, and the slow decay of unfulfilled potential? There's something obscene about a life half-lived, a grotesque mockery of what could have been divine. And yet, that is the fate of many, to die many times before their death, each time they turn from the edge of becoming. But here, now, in this very moment, you are closer than ever. So, why does your hand still tremble? We sabotage ourselves at the threshold because we are terrified of what lies beyond it. Not the unknown, but the possibility deformed by its brilliance. There is a violence in becoming, a quiet, slow-burning agony in letting go of everything that made us small enough to be loved, to be predictable, to be forgiven. Success is not a prize, but an exposure. And to be exposed is to be seen. Undressed not a penis du corpo, mas de narrativa que sustenemos como segunda pelle. The story that says, asterisk, I tried. Asterisk, the story that says, asterisk, the world wasn't ready. Asterisk, but what if the only one not ready was you? What if you had crafted a theater of almost, a cathedral of delays? Because the God you truly serve is the one that keeps you incomplete, safe, forgotten, and quietly dying. There is something sacred in the art of sabotage, a perverse ritual returning to the wound, because the wound is familiar, and familiarity is the only home we trust. We say we fear failure, but failure is gentle compared to the savagery of confronting our own potential without armor. The closer we come to our light, the more we are blinded by it, and so we crawl backward into shadows we have named logic, reason, timing. We whisper to ourselves that it isn't the right moment, that something is missing, that we just need more time. But the truth is that time has become a coffin, and you are the one hammering the nails. Every hesitation is a eulogy. Every excuse, a burial rite. There's a child inside you who once reached for something impossible and was laughed at. There's a teenager who dared to dream out loud and was silenced. And there's an adult now who carries those ghosts like a second spine, bowed under the weight of inherited limitations. And yet within all this, there's another voice, quiet, ancient, insistent, that still calls you forward. That voice is not gentle. It is a scream of what you could become if you stop kneeling before your own narrative. But to rise would mean you no longer get to be a victim. And isn't that the final addiction? The comfort of blame, the righteousness of being broken, the invisible praise we collect by remaining beneath our power? You don't sabotage yourself because you are afraid of falling. You sabotage yourself because you are afraid there might be no fall, only flight. And flying demands you let go of gravity, of pity, of the version of yourself that others could tolerate. Flying means solitude. It means becoming so vast that people no longer recognize you. And perhaps you no longer recognize yourself. It means shedding the mask stitched together by expectations, guilt, loyalty to pain. And what then? When there is no script, no applause, no one left to save or impress. Only you, raw and unrepeatable, in confrontation with your own magnitude. Do you run from this because you believe it's too much? Or because you sense deep down that it has always been yours? There's a moment, sharp, quiet, irreversible, when a lie can no longer protect you, when the repetition becomes unbearable, when you look at the cage and realize the door was open the entire time, but you stayed because freedom would have required you to mourn everything that kept you company in the dark. And yet here you are again, right at the edge. You have built the ladder. You have traced the map. You have sculpted the key. So why do your hands still tremble? Why does some part of you still crave the fall, still beg for delay, still worship the wound? Perhaps because your old self knows it will not survive the crossing. And that is the point. No one reaches the summit unchanged. You must die to be crowned. You must disappear to finally appear. And if that terrifies you, good. It should, because it means something sacred is waking up. And perhaps now, in a silence heavier than any word, you understand. What always held you back was never the height of the summit, but the absence of a mirror at the top. Because success, that golden whisper we chase, is less a victory and more revelation. It does not make you someone new. It unveils the self you tried not to become. And that truth, raw and incandescent, cannot be undone. How do you face the world after glimpsing your own greatness without disguise? How do you return to fit inside the clothes stitched from doubt? Self-sabotage is not a mistake. It is a ritual, an ancient dance between fear and the aching desire to bloom. To sabotage oneself is to build mazes where there were once doors, to sleep beside freedom and call a nightmare. But now, the walls have begun to crack. The justifications have faded, and the question echoes louder than ever. What if the thing you fear most is exactly what would make you whole? There is something sacred in this confrontation, this trembling at the edge of becoming. No scream, no applause, only you standing before the unlived life that still waits with open arms. This moment is not asking for perfection. It is demanding truth. The kind of truth that strips, that scars, that sets fire to every smaller version of who you once were. Not to destroy you, but to reveal the cathedral you have always hidden beneath your ruins. And perhaps that is the only awakening that matters. Not the discovery of a new world, but the unbearable remembering of who you were before the forgetting. If your heart aches now, let it ache. It means the slumber is ending. Let this pain be your evidence. Let it guide you through the narrow corridor where your old self dies and your real one begins to breathe. So if something moved in you, however quietly, however violently, don't let it slip back into silence. Like this, not as a reflex, But as someone who has seen their shadow and is no longer afraid, share this not as a habit, but as a gesture of revolt against the sleep of others, and subscribe not to follow, but to stand, to walk, to rise. Because sometimes belonging begins with the courage to admit, I am no longer who I pretended to be.